Hey, hi Jithu. First of all, thanks for joining in, and really very excited to have this quick chat with you. So before we get started, I'd like to quickly ask you to do a small round of introduction about you, so that anyone watches this can know a little more about you. That'd be great.
Sure. Thank you so much, Vinod. I think we just we spoke to each other, I think, a couple of weeks back in another session, and here we are today already discussing about all these, right? So thank you so
Yeah.
much for this wonderful opportunity once again. So just a quick intro. I'm a senior security analyst at customer experience company, right? A well-known customer experience company. So what I do is I support multiple cybersecurity teams within my organization. So my core is security architecture. I have a cloud security, supporting compliance teams, application security, something that I took up as well. So that from a career perspective, I do multiple things that I can. I've been blessed enough to have a great team, who gives me the opportunity to work on everything that I want to. So my entire
Lovely.
goal was to make sure that learn as much as I can, right? Be a jack of all trades, at least master of few. So I do that. And from my learning perspective or personal goals, I am still doing my master's from corporate master's at Race. I'm doing my master's in cybersecurity. Um, I think pretty much it from me. And apart from all that, I'm a public, I go to conferences, I do public speaking, I take guest lectures, I do small keynotes, webinar sessions like this, so all of this multiple.
So I'll keep this conversation as short as possible, as crisp as possible, so that there is a meaningful dialogue, very casual discussion, meaningful dialogue, and there's something to take away from this for anyone who watches this, right? So
Yeah.
before we get started, how would you describe yourself in terms of cyber space? What space in cybersecurity have you touched upon?
Multiple. Like I said. So the problem with big organizations is that, or really large enterprises is that you have many people to work. Like you have a certain person just to work on a certain thing. So I told you, I'm blessed enough to work on multiple things, right? So I started with cloud security. I've got hands-on experience in cloud security in all the three major clouds. I've dealt with a couple of things when it comes to technical reviews from compliance perspectives, right? Then application security is something I took up, earlier last year. So I do software composition analysis, helping finding vulnerabilities, issues with vulnerabilities, understanding if that vulnerability is a problem, things like that. Apart from that, automation is something that I started bringing up in multiple things where we saw a lot of manual work. And I really think automation is not a separate job category. It comes in every domain you have in today's world. So I worked there as well.
Oh, lovely, lovely. So, if my understanding is right, the major areas that you've worked upon is AppSec,
Yep.
DevSecOps, cloud
Yep.
security, and also around zero trust network architecture design and so on,
Yep.
right? Okay, say, how did you get started with the web application sec roadmap?
Okay. That see, just to answer, instead of answering that, I'll maybe answer like, how did I even start into cybersecurity, right? So honestly speaking, IT was not something for me. I never thought I'd be working in IT. But at a point when I realized that I'll have to work in IT because that was my core education and all that, I made one decision saying that, so if I'm working in the information technology space, it's going to be cybersecurity and nothing else, right? Because that is the only thing that actually I felt challenging enough. Because everyone you see during the college days or during your university days, everyone was into. You ask a question, the most common answer is software engineering. I'm like, why? Why is everyone into software engineering? There's so many other things to do. That's when cybersecurity, I saw what it was. It was really interesting, felt challenging for me. Then I made sure that that is the only thing I'll do.
Mhm.
I didn't apply for any placements. I was jobless for almost 6 months. Then I did an internship for 1 year, right? The roadmap was really simple for me. At first, I had no one to guide me. It was just myself. So I did what everyone else does. Started learning everything that was there, right? I mean, everything's there on the internet, but the thing is, not everything is right for you, right?
Mhm.
Whatever you want is there free on the internet, but it's not necessary that it is going to help you as a fresher or a beginner who's getting into a
Very
domain.
true.
So I started taking everything that was there in the world, starting learning this from cloud, application security, pen test, as like everyone does, as every student does. They say the moment you say cybersecurity, they say I want to do ethical hacking because
Mhm.
you think ethical hacking is cybersecurity. It is not, right?
Mhm.
So I started there. I myself started there. Then started learning everything. I didn't make any progress. I understood I'm doing something wrong. Made sure that I look into one particular domain.
Mhm.
Then what I tried to do was, the other thing is, started going through job descriptions, right? Multiple job openings. I started noting down stuff which most companies commonly ask for a particular role, right? Then I started learning those. Then understood that there's no point in just learning, you have to start implementing stuff. I started doing things practically, right? When it came to pen testing, that was something I actually started, right? With my CA certification and all that. I started, installing vulnerable VMs like DBWAs or whatever. I started manually pen testing it, trying to find out what the vulnerabilities were. Then I understood, okay, that doesn't interest me that much. It's actually a really interesting field. I'm not telling you it's not, but that was not something for me, right? But I did want to get into it, but I started practicing it. The same way when it came to cloud, I started seeing if AWS or Azure, they provide free credits, right? With that free credits, I tried to manually go through all of the platforms. So this is how I started in anything. So to answer your question, how did I start from the web application side or your application security side? Just start going through stuff, right? See what companies do, see what is the most trending technology out there, how you can start implementing at your own home level itself, right? It's not that you have to do everything at your enterprise. You can do something what you do at an enterprise level can be done at your home, at a small home-based project. That is basically a practical hands-on experience. So that is what I do with everything. Make sure that I do practically, not instead of learning theoretically now. So today, learning anything theory is something that I don't do. It's more of a practical thing for me.
Oh, lovely. So I'm glad you. Your answer was spot on, right? When I asked you about how you got into cyber, you gave me a beautiful roadmap of anyone watching here can actually get some insights of what all they can do, not just into pen testing space, right? Like you said, every single fresher who I see wants to get into cyber, wants to get into ethical hack, and there is just too much beyond that, right?
Yeah.
And now I understand web application pen testing is something that you can set up a lab at home and practice. And for cloud, you have free credits with which you can practice and get a hands-on. For what about zero trust? What about IAM? Do we have some inputs or guidance for anyone watching this where they can practice?
Okay, that's an interesting question, because when we say zero trust, right, it's not like something you can implement. Now, if you say you're building a pen testing lab at home, or let's say you're building your own cloud network at home, or you're building your own SOC lab at home, it is easy to do. You have open source tools for that. I mean, you're implementing something. The problem with zero trust is you can't implement it, because zero trust is technically a transition towards it, right? It's just a concept that you're transitioning to. There's nothing to implement. It's not a tool or something. So getting hands-on experience with that for a student would be hard. So the best thing that they can do is understand what zero trust is, right? Make sure they just don't just sit with this particular common phrase. Everyone thinks zero trust means always verify, never trust. It's not just that. I mean, that's just a dialogue that's out there. What does continuous verification mean, right? In what sense? Right? Not just when they say something like zero trust means that you're always verifying, you're never trusting, you're continuously verifying. What are you verifying for, right? So the first thing will be IAM, like you said. The first thing would be IAM. So when they're trying to learn IAM, the best thing that they can do is, what is identity and access management? What is identity, right? What is that identity accessing, and what are we managing, right? Break it down into simple concepts, right? Understand the concept as a whole. Now, why should a company do that? Now, you question yourself, right? If I didn't do it, what's the problem? Right? So or talk to people who are actually working in that space. For example, GRC. How can a student sitting at home practically implement a GRC? You can't do SOC 2 audits at your home. You can't do ISO audits at your home, right? So what do? You talk to people who have worked in that space. Ask them, what is it that actually happens? What is that work that you do day to day? What happens in your life, right? Or what is that you do? Do you do just documentation? People think GRC is just documentation. It's not, right? Documentation is a part of it. So understand what they do. Then you figure out what can you do at home itself, right? When you say IAM, one thing that you can do is, let's say you have a Netflix account, right? People start sharing a Netflix password. It's the most common thing that you can do. How many people are you sharing it to? I mean, absolutely. In a sense, that is your access management, right? At home, what you do, right? Then if your Wi-Fi passwords, how many people are you sharing it with? Is it secure enough? So think all of this from an enterprise level, but try to cascade it down to your home. Right? You might not have a SSO at your home, but what is equivalent of it, right? What are the things that you do here with passwords? How can you manage that here? So understand that concept, break it down, best way to start.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks for giving a heads up there. So, having said that, you worked on multiple vulnerabilities and working towards fixing them and so on, right? My question to you is, I understand you worked on resolving vulnerabilities and designing a zero trust control, right? In your experience, why do most organizations struggle to move from reactive security to a architectural security?
Yeah, the problem is when you say reactive security, right? It's easier to justify, right? I mean, it's because you are able to see the pain. Reactive security is easy to justify. The problem with architectural security or zero trust or proactive security is that you're trying to prevent problem that is not there. Now, you as a security professional, the problem is you must convince your leadership saying that there is a problem. You have to figure it out, right? How we can solve it. How would you show that problem? How would you make them understand? How would you tell them what the I make them understand of the business justification? Like you have to justify that, right? So that's the problem. So reactive security is easier because you can justify, and you don't have to show what the problem is if you don't have security, right? And
Very true.
and the other biggest problem that I see is most of the companies. Maybe today we are better, but most of the companies' cybersecurity initiatives are funded by incidents, not strategy, right? Only after a breach, a customer escalation, an audit finding, your organization has a budget now. Until that you don't, because I don't blame them as well. If I set up a company today, my goal is to increase revenue, right? And I'm going to spend that revenue to revenue making teams, right? Is cybersecurity a revenue generating team? You're not. Unless you're a service provider, cybersecurity service provider, you're not generating revenue from cybersecurity.
In fact, in cybersecurity for pre-sales and sales team, there's a popular quote they often say. They say, if you think cybersecurity is expensive, try having a breach.
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly
that's perfectly said.
Yeah,
that's a major reason. Unless you hit with a breach, you're not focusing on security, right? And the first thing you do after the first thing you do after a breach is fire the CISO. The CISO tried to tell you what the problem is. You didn't agree to it. There's no point in just firing a CISO and bringing a new one, right? So that's a major concern, right? And the other thing is when you look at security from an architecture perspective, you need to bring in multiple teams to collaborate. It's not just one team, right? Because reactive security, in simple words, there's fixing a vulnerability ticket, right? You raise a ticket and you fix it. But proactive or architectural basically means you have to change how your development teams or your engineering teams build systems as a whole, right? The problem with that is now you are challenging product deadlines, right? Now, if I have DevSecOps, right, implemented in my company, and I see vulnerabilities in some deployment that's going on, I'm not going to approve it unless you fix those vulnerabilities. Your product deadlines is being challenged, right? You're influencing your entire DevOps pipelines. You have to redesign your entire network model. That is the hardest part. Your company, if your company was set up like 30 years back, you already have your networks in place in a certain way. There's no way of going and changing it because you don't know what's going to happen because the person who set it up is not there now, right? That's the other thing. Cross-team collaboration is hard. And when you bring all of these together, it doesn't seem worthwhile, right? Doesn't seem it's worth the effort to do. So that's the problem from shifting from reactive to proactive or an architectural security.
I completely agree with you. And it is really fascinating to understand that most of the times security incident funds than the strategy. Very interesting point. So having said that, based on your experience, you mentioned that you've automated IAM audits and segmentation scans for complaints. How important is automation in modern security? And can security survive without it?
So you can survive because everyone survives, right? Now, if you take another example, when you talk about legacy systems, there will be some architect coming and telling you these legacy systems won't help you in 5 years or 10 years time. You won't survive. But we still have companies running legacy systems from 20 years back. Would it survive? So the problem is not that can you survive. You can survive, but your security initiatives cannot scale without automation in today's world. Scaling would be the biggest challenge that you face, right? And the other thing is, why don't you automate? Why do you want to sit there and do the same redundant manual effort, right? Why do you want to spend so much money? If you can do something that a simple Python script can do, You can spend your time in something really important, right? Think of a different solution for your company. Think about something that can help change everyone's time. You can do that. That is what the human mind is for. We are not meant to sit in front of a laptop trying to do the closing Jira tickets, 1,000 Jira tickets, the same thing over and over again. That's not what the human mind is for, right? We are meant to do multiple things. We are meant to do more important stuff. Live the manual stuff for Python scripts, right? Live the
Absolutely.
things for Bash scripts, right? Do that
Absolutely.
because in today's world, companies are too huge. It's almost everything is in cloud. It's API driven. Everything is ephemeral. Everything is changing really fast. Nothing is permanent. If you have a development team, your CI/CD pipeline pushes multiple deployments daily. How do you expect two people to do that, right? Even if you have 10 people, why do you want 10 people to do that? Let them do something else,
Yeah.
right? So you will survive. But the thing is, if you want to scale, you have to be bring in automation as well. So because the thing is, without automation, your security initiatives becomes documentation heavy, right? But from an operational perspective, it's becoming blind.
True.
You're putting a lot of weight on yourself itself. So you'll have to bring in automation at one point or the other.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. No, having said that, you just touched briefly upon AI and you touched upon automation. So my question to you is, do you think cybersecurity professionals can survive by just knowing how to use AI tools? Or will the future demand they understand how to build and architect AI-driven systems as well? What's your thought on that?
Okay. You know how people say, when we reach the point where people say AI is going to take your job, right? We
Yeah,
reach
yeah,
there.
yeah,
So now everyone's trying to see how you can use AI.
yeah.
And the problem that I see, or something that annoys me a lot, is people say I use AI for my work, at my work and all that. And the only thing when they say that, the only thing that they mean is they use ChatGPT to do stuff, right?
Mm,
That is what is meant by using AI.
mm,
There's no point in you just using AI tools, right? I mean, in a short term, security professional can survive by just using AI tools. In a short term, yes, because you can use it for report generation, you can use it for threat hunting queries. If you're a SOC analyst, you don't have to remember any of your KQL queries. You can just ask ChatGPT, this is what I want to search. What is the equivalent KQL query available? You can use Copilot, AI Copilot for code reviews. Claude just released 2 days or 3 days back. Claude just released Claude Code for security. And almost all the cybersecurity companies went down in the stock markets, right? You can all do this in a short term. Using AI tools is good. That's just to, again, save your time from an automation perspective.
mm.
But for me as a person, my personal thought or my personal goal is to make sure that how you can design one of a system like that, because that is how I am, right? People say it's not necessary. True, it might not be necessary, but why don't you do that? Because 10 years back, if you say AI would take your job, nobody would have agreed. Today we are at the point where you say AI can take your job. So maybe 5 years later, unless you know to design an AI system like that, maybe your job is going to be redundant, right? You
I
cannot say.
agree.
I'm not telling I am right, but you cannot say what's going to happen tomorrow, right? So what I think is, at least in the coming future, be someone who understands what AI is, what ML is, right? One major problem that I keep seeing is people confuse AI for automation. They bring in some small Python scripts, they automate some manual tasks, they say I did it with AI. No, you didn't. You used an AI tool to give you an automation script and you automated the task. That is not AI, right? What is AI? What is automation, right? When do you do it? So if your task, I think this is something one of a mentor that I look up to actually said, and it actually stuck with me for a long time, and it helped me as well. If your task requires knowledge, then use AI. If your task doesn't need knowledge, you can just automate it, right? People still don't understand these two concepts, and that's true. So again, circling back to your question, I think in the future, at least, you have to be someone who can understand models, how you train data, your feature engineering, your model biases. Just build a small ML model at your home, right? That is more than enough. I'm not telling you to build the next Claude code. I'm not telling you to build the next Gemini. Build a small AI model at your home. See how they failed, why they're failing. Can you do that? Can you build this in your home SOC lab, right? Doing something like this would definitely help. And these set of people who do this, I'm pretty sure these are ones that's going to survive for sure.
I'm sure too. So, having said, we spoke about AI, we spoke about models, LLMs and all that. I'll just quickly jump to compliance a bit because having said DPDP is a forum where we met, I would like to briefly touch upon DPDP a bit, right? So with the regulations like DPDP emerging today, right? Do you think compliance actually improves security, or it is just increasing the load or paperwork? What do you
Mhm.
think? What do you think about it? What's your perspective?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you would agree. There's this famous saying that we say, right? You're just because you're compliant doesn't mean that you're secure, right?
Mm,
Compliance does not equal to security. So compliance can help improve security, but only indirectly. The reason why I say is the last webinar that we spoke,
mm,
I think one point that I made is the only reason people bring in security in today's companies or in the companies is because of fear.
mm,
That's all. It's not because they understand the importance of security. It's because they're worried about compliance,
mm,
right?
mm,
Because if you're a service-based company, your client is not going to take your service unless you are compliant with certain standards, right?
mm,
That is
mm,
the only thing why companies are still pushing security. Otherwise, they wouldn't have. So that's
mm,
the problem. That's why I said, compliance only brings in security indirectly. It's not direct.
mm, mm, mm,
Because what compliance actually does is it just forces your company to have documentation. It forces
mm,
your company to have accountability
mm,
and all of
mm,
these stuff, right?
mm, mm,
But security is what? Security is making sure. See, for me, it should be the opposite way. You're not doing it just because you have to be compliant. It's
mm,
not that
mm,
you have every 6 months a PCI audit, and that is why you're bringing the security. No,
mm, mm.
you do security, and this compliance is the next part. There's a side part of it. That's how it should be, right?
Got it.
And coming to DPDP, it's definitely going to push companies to focus more on security because you have to now identify personal data flows, where your personal data is or PII data is entering from. You have to start implementing retention controls, breach notification, one of the most important thing in
Mm,
DPDP,
mm,
right?
mm,
Um, One discussion that I had, one of the person who was a DPO, he said that, uh, as per the current law, every single breach has to be notified. It's not that how much you're losing. It's like every single breach has to be notified.
mm,
Even though
mm,
that might not seem as that viable, you still have to do that. So all of these things would push companies to think in a way that okay, now I have to start focusing more on my security only, then I have to be compliant. So yeah,
mm,
I still
mm,
don't think compliance equals security. I still don't
mm,
think compliance drives security or improves security because it just does
mm,
it indirectly because people fear of not. They're just scared that they won't be SOC 2
mm,
compliant. They're just scared
mm,
that they won't be PCI compliant. That's all.
mm, mm. Got it. So that gives me a very good perspective. So before I go to anything else, I would like to quickly touch upon zero trust,
Uh-huh.
right? Then maybe I'll come back to the previous question. So
Sure.
what is the biggest misconception that organizations have when they say they have implemented zero trust? What do you think?
Yeah. So yeah, here's one thing that you might end up hearing a lot, right? Somebody coming and saying, "Hey, we have implemented zero trust in my organization." I ask, okay, then I'm going to ask, "How did you do it?" We just bought a product, right? That's the biggest misconception. You think you implemented zero trust just because you bought a product? No, you didn't. Because like I said, you do not implement zero trust. You transition to zero trust, right?
True,
You
true.
do not implement it because your zero trust is not like just a replacement to your VPN. Your zero trust is not a ZTNA license or an identity
Mm,
provider, right?
mm, mm,
Because it's an architecture, it's a
mm,
principle, which means no implicit trust. You verify continuously, you bring in least privilege, your segmentation. So it's not just a tool. I mean,
mm,
tools are just a helper to you, right? They
mm,
just push you. That's all. From architecture perspective, you have to change it, right? And
mm,
one thing that you see, I think it is, I forgot the exact document. It's NIST. There's a document for zero trust, I think 800, 170 or 700 something. That beautifully tells how you can start from an architecture level itself, right?
mm,
Because when you say, let's say, talk about IAM, the
mm,
biggest concern in today's world, because we say
mm,
identity is the new perimeter, right? Instead of just saying identity is the new perimeter, what are you doing for it? Did you just get an SSO tool? Does that
mm,
mean you're secure? No. There are multiple things. It's like
mm,
you gave access to someone. If you stop with that, it doesn't mean you're secure or you're transitioned to zero trust.
mm,
So what it means is now Jithu as a person requested access to something, right?
mm,
Your questions should be why, how, when, things like this, right? Now if someone, let's say you have a finance VP, right?
mm,
He usually works from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.,
mm,
right? And he usually never looks into the finance database, the application database, because why would a finance DB look into an application database, right? If he or another scenario where he's looking at the finance DB maybe at 12 in the night, it's an
mm,
unusual time, right?
mm, mm,
Basically, your UEBA, user entity
mm,
and behavior analytics, right? Things
mm.
like this. Is your architecture context aware? right?
Mm.
Now, 1 hour back, Vinod accessed this application from Bangalore, but
Mm.
now he is accessing it from, I don't know, the US.
Mm.
Is it possible to do that? No. Can
Mm.
your system, can your architecture think about
Mm.
that in that way,
Mm.
right? So
Mm.
all of
Mm.
these are actually important when you think about it in that way. And I
Okay.
think you're right. Everyone thinks just because you bought a couple of tools from some vendor, that you think it's not. It's an
I
architecture,
agree.
it's a mindset.
I agree. So maybe last but one question to you. Say, imagine you are heading a startup, okay,
Mhm.
and heading a startup in cyberspace, maybe a 100-member company or a 15-member company, right? What are the first 3 steps that you take, right, for
Mhm.
increasing the security posture of the company?
Okay. So increasing security posture of the company, right? I mean, it could depend on the business model,
Okay.
but when you compliance should ideally start early because
Okay.
when you start, I mean, you would have pretty sure heard about startups where people ask, even though if it's an early stage startup, customers or potential customers ask, are you SOC 2
Mm.
certified? Are you
Mm.
GDPR compliant?
Mm.
So compliance should start early because that's the only way you will get customers from a
Mhm.
business perspective. But from a
Mhm.
security perspective, like you said, how would you start improving your security posture?
Mm.
It should be like phase based, right? It's like
Mm.
it's a phase based, like a compliance maturity kind of a thing.
Mm.
So
Mm.
put it into
Mm.
different stages, right? So
Mm.
stage one for a startup could be you're building an application, so
Mm.
bring in secure coding practices. If
Mm.
your application itself is not secure, then how are you
Mm.
providing us tool which is talking about security, right?
Mm.
Bringing in IAM hygiene, even though your startup is a small company, start small, right?
Mm.
Because
Mm.
when you reach to a point where you have 10,000 employees, it's hard to manage. So start
Mm.
initially itself.
Mm. Mm.
Then define a baseline, define some simple cloud misconfiguration monitoring. This is stage one. Then
Mm.
you start scaling into stage two, right? So your secure coding practices was stage one. So in
Mm.
stage two, a replacement for that is policy as a code enforcement,
Mm.
right?
Mm. Mm.
Scales normally because you cannot bring all of these into a startup
Mm.
initially itself. It's really hard
Mm.
from
Mm.
a monetary perspective,
Mm.
from getting manpower and all of that.
Mm.
So move it to the stages, right? Bringing in
Mm. Mm.
segmentation.
Mm.
Then you start, if you are using some vendors, start
Mm.
doing a risk review for those vendors, right?
Mm.
So then when you reach to an enterprise level, that's where your continuous compliance comes into the picture,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Can you get in more people where you can do independent audits? Can you
Mm.
integrate governance as a whole into your
Mm.
company? So just do
Mm.
it phase by phase. Don't
Mm.
start bring everything at first stage and in the end you don't do anything, right? So bring it into
Mm.
phases.
Got it. So, I mean, well thought and answered. So, thanks, Jithu, for that.
Mhm.
So, there is a following question to that, right? Say it's a startup, right? Say it is a startup. They don't have a lot of fund, right? They are not prepared to start investing on anything, any tech
Mhm.
space. So, are there open source alternatives that you would suggest? If yes, what are the packages or what are the popular tools that you would suggest that startups can try exploring?
There are a lot. I don't think I can actually specifically name out a certain open source, project for as a replacement for any other tool, right? Because there are so many, to be honest. And not just me, nobody would have gone through everything to say which is best, right?
Mm.
Now, if you take SOC, because monitoring is important, right? Without monitoring, it's going to be really hard. You need a SIM, right? So SIMs are expensive. So do you need an open source? Yes, there is an open source. The most common one is Wazoo, right?
Mm.
And honestly speaking, I think I am pretty sure that a lot of new startups coming with these next gen sims or some companies coming with their own sim. All of these are basically Wazoo on a wrapper, right?
Kibana,
You
right?
just brought, yeah, it's just that. I mean, it's not just somebody built their own sim. It's just Wazoo
Mm.
on a wrapper. So Wazoo is a really good open source sim that you can use.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
that is something that I actually recommend students who are trying to get into SOC to do before actually applying for companies. They do this
Mm.
home lab. Use
Mm.
Wazoo, integrate Wazoo, and try to see if you can build your own sim dashboard, right?
Mm.
So that
Mm.
Wazoo could be a really good, alternative for sim. Now, if you
Mm.
come to anything, right, there is a lot of open source things. Now, from a pen test or an application security point of view, for your DAST or your application pen testing, everything is actually open source. You don't need to
Mm.
have, I mean, Burpsuit has a licensed version as well,
Mm.
but you
Yeah.
have the free version. I mean, the licensed version brings in more automation or all of that, more attacking models and all of that. But you do get a certain amount of things that you actually need from the free
Mm.
version as well. You have
Mm. Got
Nmap
it.
for your network
Mm.
scanning and port scanning, your
Mm.
initial
Mm.
recon, you have Nmap. You
Mm.
have your crack map exact.
Mm.
Now they just
Mm.
for the crack map exact, they actually upgraded their version into something else called NetExec, right? So you have a lot of open source alternatives for everything. But if you compare it with the AI cybersecurity community and our AI community, AI open source community and cybersecurity community, I think AI community is too good, right? They've been there for a long time, and every time you see a big company put out a new model, next day the open source community pushes out something, right, for free. I think we also have a couple of good things like that, because today I keep seeing, every time I open my Google, the first thing I see is Pentest GPT, or there's a new automated tool for penetration testing. So you already have an open source for that. Every day you open something new, there's always new coming up. I think we are also catching up. The cybersecurity community also is catching up at the open source level as well. But I think we need to contribute more there.
So excellent. So you had suggested for any students who want to get into cybersecurity and make cybersecurity as a core career, you suggest them they set up SOC labs in their home and practice Wazoo based using Kibana and DAST with Burp Suite. And what else would you suggest for them?
Yeah, I mean, Wazoo is only if you're interested in SOC, right? If you're a person who is trying to get into GRC, I mean, if your goal is to get into GRC, I mean, it doesn't make sense if I tell him start learning what a SIM is. I mean, you have to know what a SIM is, right? You have to know the thing. See, I think when we discussed, like I said, people think cybersecurity is just ethical hacking, right? But when you actually bring up the tree and you start splitting different domains, you would actually see that there are 40 different or 50 different domains within cybersecurity itself. Ethical hacking is a small part within application security, which is a small part within something else, right? So if you're trying to you have to know all of these. I mean, when you say you know all of these, if someone says DevSecOps, you should know what DevSecOps means, even though you work in GRC, even though you work in fraud, you should know what DevSecOps is. You don't maybe need to know how you do it technically, but just know what it is. Then when you figure out, what you want to do, if it is SOC, build a home-based SOC lab, right? That's the most practical thing you can do before getting into a company, because every company needs a student to have 3 years of experience, even though they are an intern. I clearly don't get it. Yeah, no, I actually have no idea why people do that. And it's not just for freshers, even for experienced professionals who are trying to move to the next level. They tell, let's say you're trying to get into a senior role after 3 or 4 years. For that particular role, even though it is GRC, they ask you CEH. I mean, what has GRC to do with CEH? Not sure if there is a gap between HRs having a knowledge of what this is, because GRC role doesn't need ethical hacking certification, right? I mean, you understand what I'm trying to bring in, right?
Yeah.
You ask people with 5 years experience or 4 years of experience for having a CISSP certification. You only get a CISSP certification if you have 5 years of experience, and how will I get it, right? So things like that. So try to get as much as practical experience. So if it is SOC, maybe build a home-based SIM setup, right? If you're trying to do penetration testing, try automating it, try building your own pen test tool, right? That's the best way to do. I mean, because if you need to build your own pen test tool, you need to understand what different tools are, how those tools work. Only then you'll be able to integrate in any way. So try building this as a whole, right? So understand all of these. So just do practical. Wherever you can bring in practical stuff, do that. Publish it in your own GitHub repository. Start putting it out in your what do you call it? Those Medium articles? Do posts, blogs. Show it off. Simple show it off on LinkedIn to show that you have practical experience, right? That's the best way to go for it.
Okay, excellent. So that was a very interesting perspective, Jithu. Thanks for that. Yeah. I think I'll go with the last one question and won't take much of your time. So I don't want to ask how you got started into cybersecurity. That's something that I can understand while talking with you. Right now, you are in a phase of your career, in a phase of your life. Right now, what is the next thing that you would want to do in your cybersecurity space?
Okay, thank you. I think I was waiting for finally someone asked me that question. Okay, thank you for asking that question. And this is something really close to me. I don't know how it's going to sound for other people, because it's kind of a bit ambitious when I say this, right? Everywhere I go, everywhere I start something, one thing that I say is my goal is to become one of the youngest CISOs, right? The reason behind that is simple. I just want to keep something challenging. Like I told initially, I didn't choose software engineering for a career because everyone wants to do software engineering, right? I don't want to do the same thing everyone's doing. I want to do something that feels challenging, feels interesting, So that's why I chose cybersecurity. So that same mindset I have everywhere. So, I mean, I would become a CISO, let's say in 20 years time. You work 20 years, you are going to become a CISO one day or the other. I mean, what's the fun in that, right? Everyone does that. So what's different? So I was like, when I started my master's, they asked me, what is it that you want? I said, I want to become one of the youngest CISOs. And how young? I don't know. Because the problem with that is it's almost close to not possible, because let's say, you have a really large enterprise level company. Would you trust someone who is having 7 years of experience on the paper to lead your cybersecurity team? You won't. Even I won't, right? And the other problem is, let's say somebody actually trusted me to lead their security. I would be the biggest challenge for hackers, because it's like a challenge to them, right? When a 25-year-old experienced veteran can't stop a hacker, how can someone with just 5 or 6 or 7 years of experience come in? It's just like a challenge to them, right? So I'm putting a big target on my back. And today's world, everyone thinks experience means knowledge. It doesn't. I'm going to hurt a lot of people when I say this. I can clearly tell there are so many people who are really new to their career, who have just been less than 10 years, who knows so many things, right? Who knows everything. When I say everything, knows what they're talking about. So experience does bring you things that knowledge can't, or learning or passion can't, because experience is experience. That is irreplaceable. You can't replace it. But there are people who are actually knowledgeable. Doesn't mean just because they have 5 years experience doesn't mean that they are, they don't know anything, right? So yeah, that is one of my driving forces in this field, is to become one of the younger CISOs. It's not a challenge to anyone. It's just a challenge to myself, because otherwise it's boring, right? What is point in working 9 to 5 job for the rest of my life? And the other thing that I want to do is, so like I said initially, I love the AI open source community, right? You bring in, let's say Opus today, tomorrow you have an open source model for Opus. I want to do something for cybersecurity like that, right? Any tool that you have, be part of a community that brings the open source version of it. I've not done anything today, honestly, but I'm trying to go towards it, learning. Considering all the things that I do, it's hard to find time, but still trying to figure out stuff. Now, since I told AI, you have to start learning how to build your own AI systems. Learning that is another thing. So that then all of these is the reason why I even chose my master's in the first place. Otherwise, working on weekdays, masters on weekends, your public speaking sessions and lectures on between. It's hectic, but keep learning, build new stuff, do something different, right? Just don't end up being a person who just worked for 20 years and you just stopped working. Do something different that people remember you, right? Bring a change. Bring a change. Tomorrow somebody should say the reason why we moved to this is because Jithu did this. He did something. Usually people don't come out to sessions or webinars and talk about certain stuff. I I call out stuff that I feel that is wrong. So I do want to bring a change in the community, do something different. So that's the whole entire goal or mindset I have.
Absolutely, Jithu. That was really interesting and a very different perspective of looking at it. And I'm sure that in the near future, I'm going to see a youngest CISO from India. And I'm sure that you're going to be doing it pretty well in your own style. So all the very best. Do good for that. And I'm sure most of them who have watched this particular video have something to carry back, either as a learning, as an inspiration, or something to copy upon. Right. So all the very best, do good and keep doing your amazing work. And let us see what best we all can contribute back to the society in terms of cybersecurity and awareness for not just large enterprises, but also small and medium scale companies as it gets hit. Right?
Yes.
All the very best.
Agreed.
Do good. Any closing notes you want to share?
No, I just want to make sure that everyone who is into cybersecurity just don't focus on their organizations and focus on personal security as well. Because whenever I get invited to colleges, this is my core topic, right? It is not cybersecurity in an organization, it is cybersecurity in your personal life, because that is more important than in an organization, even though people would. Your organization is just a job, right? And if you are not able to secure your personal life, your job doesn't even matter. So bring in awareness, make people understand that cybersecurity is not an option. At your personal level and at your organization level. So, and the open source community, India as a whole, we need to start bringing in solutions. I really hate the fact that Israel is one of the best countries when it comes to cybersecurity. Why not India, right? Why aren't we Indians bringing out solutions? Why aren't we taking the risk? We can do great, right? So can we bring out solutions that challenge all the other solutions out in the world? Can we be the best? Can we support the open source community? Can we do this? So I think if this video somehow inspires at least one person, then that would be great.
I'm sure I'm already that one here.
Great, then I've succeeded. Okay,
So,
awesome.
yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure there'll be some people who watch this and get inspired and probably reach out for some kind of input, mentorship, or something of that sort. So let's see what best we can do in our own sweet ways.
Yes.
Right? All right.
Yeah.
Such a pleasure connecting with you, Jithu Joseph. It was a very interesting chat, and it was not a very formal, official chat. So,
Yeah.
very casual, candid, very interesting chat. I really enjoyed it myself. So, I look forward in catching up with you once again on some other topic. But at this point in time, I'd like to wish you once again all the very best on becoming the country's youngest CISO. Good luck,
Yeah.
and please do mentor people around you, so they also probably become a CISO at some point in time.
Yep. Yep.
Right?
Thank you so much for
All
this
right. Thank
opportunity.
you.
I think it's high time that I, moved out from these official talks to somewhere too personal, to simple, right? I don't think
Absolutely.
I should have even worn this blazer, but it was really good. I actually enjoyed it this time. Thank you so much,
Absolutely.
Have a
Absolutely.
great one. Thank you.
Yeah. Take care. Chiku. See you.